reliable sources. Before Tuesday, journalism advocates said Donald Trump would be a threat to press freedom. That's why today there is palpable fear among many journalists that a Trump presidency will be restrictive, litigious, and downright dangerous for the Fourth Estate. Maybe they are overreacting. But already, some journalists are receiving threats and hate mail at home as a result of pro-Trump trolls who have published their addresses online. And we've seen the president-elect himself criticizing the New York Times this morning, as we were just talking about. The big question is whether Trump's going to follow through on statements like this.
The media isn't just against me. They're against all of you. That's really what they're against. We're going to open up the libel laws.
We should reinstate libel laws so that you go after people nowadays when they make really egregious statements.
Right now, they can say anything they want to say. Someday, in the not-too-distant future, if I win, they're not going to get away with this stuff.
I'm a big believer, tremendous believer in freedom of the press. Nobody believes it stronger than me.
Here with me now, famed First Amendment lawyer Floyd Abrams. He's also the author of the upcoming book, The Soul of the First Amendment. Floyd, let's start with the conversation about libel laws. Many months ago, Trump's saying he wants to loosen up the libel laws. Can he?
No, he can't do it. He can't do it by himself as president, and he can't do it if Congress passed a law. We have no federal libel law, first of all. Libel law, state, 50 states. But they're all subject to the First Amendment. And so when he says that he wants to loosen it or change it, what he's got to do is to change the First Amendment. What he's got to do is to persuade the Supreme Court to abandon the level of very high protection for free speech that we have in this country. So, no, he can't do it, but he could try to do it. And who's to say if he gets enough appointments to the Supreme Court, if they have views which are entirely different from where the court has been, it could happen, but it's very unlikely.
Now, you're no friend of Donald Trump. We should make that clear to our audience at home. But I want you to share with me, as objectively as possible, what you think the possible threats are against individual journalists and against news outlets in the Trump age.
Well, many of them are sort of extra-legal. That's to say, doesn't have a legal angle to it at all. President-elect Trump has full First Amendment rights, so he is certainly entitled to denounce the press, to criticize it, even in ways which lead people to behave as you were talking about earlier.
Anti-Semitic messages, doxing that's happening. A lot of journalists experiencing this kind of harassment and hate.
There's no legal limitation, and there shouldn't be, on what he can say about the press. That said, the real threats are that as president, he could lead the public to be so anti-press that it would, if not destroy it, greatly limit its ability to do its constitutionally protected role. Second, he could take steps as president to try to pressure it. One Republican congressman has recently said that the FCC ought to do an investigation of the coverage of the campaign, with the possibility of license revocation.
Let's talk about that momentarily. The local stations that broadcast on NBC, ABC, CBS, etc., they all have FCC licenses from the government.
Right.
Normally, they just get approved every 4 or 8 years, whatever it is. But you're saying something like an FCC license could theoretically be targeted.
That's right.
And what about IRS audits? That's another way the government can use power against individuals.
Yes. I mean, we sound now as if we're talking about the Nixon administration, where that happened.
So should we be talking
IRS.
about this? Is it a risk to talk through these scenarios, or is it prudent?
Look, I think it's prudent to discuss these possibilities. We can hope. Look, I didn't vote for Mr. Trump. I don't wish, and I certainly don't hope that he goes down these roads. He may decide that as president, he can take a different stance, or at the least, as president, he shouldn't do things which violate the First Amendment on its face. We'll have to wait and see, but we have to be thinking now. Certainly as a lawyer, I have to be thinking, what could we do by way of defense? Suppose he goes down the anti-First Amendment road. Suppose he doesn't just criticize the Times, which has every right to do, but tries to take steps. Suppose he expels the New York Times from a presidential press conference.
Yeah, let's play that scenario out. During the campaign, Trump rejected some news outlets from receiving press credentials for his rallies. These reporters could still attend the rallies as members of the general public, but they couldn't be in the press pool. They weren't given the benefits and privileges of having a press pass. Is that possible in the White House?
We don't have a lot of cases. I think that would violate the First Amendment. That is to say, I think one could persuade a judge that punishing the press because of the content of what it runs by leaving out or expelling members of the press from full ability to cover him violates the First Amendment.
But this would have to go to the courts.
But that would have to go to the courts. I mean, unless and until it happened, I mean, he has the Secret Service. He's the one who can say, get him out of here.
And we can't have a President-elect Trump conversation without having a President Obama conversation. President Obama set a new record in terms of the administration's use of the Espionage Act to prosecute, to convict whistleblowers who leaked information to the press. Tell us about the reality check of how severe that was and whether we could see more of that with President-elect Trump.
Yeah, there are really two sorts of ways a president can go after the press in terms of covering national security issues. One is to go after sources. And President Obama's administration did that more vigorously and more consistently than any prior president. More charges against more sources to the press. The more direct threat is bringing an espionage action against the press for publishing that sort of information.
So against the New York Times or the Washington Post?
Yes, yes. You know, we have an Espionage Act passed in 1917. It is so opaque, so vague as to make it quite unpredictable how it would be applied in a number of different possible circumstances. I mean, the press, to do its job, reports on classified information with regularity. Now, will a President Trump, and I hate to give him ideas via this, but will a President Trump think of having Attorney General Giuliani bring some sort of action against the press? That's possible. That would be a major direct threat to the ability of the press to do its job.
So we must be on guard.
We have to be on guard, and we have to be thinking about the downside as we hope that it won't happen.
Floyd, good to see you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
A lot of what we're describing here are possible chilling effects, something I'm very concerned about. Whether Donald Trump takes any action against the press in the next 4 years, there's already a cloud hanging over the White House press corps because of his actions during the campaign. Up next here, my essay on media versus anti-media, plus how should journalists approach the Trump presidency. A great panel from all aspects of this world, from all across the country, right after this.